As we all know, the tank was born in Britain, but since the British invented the tank, point crooked technology tree has been divided into tanks, infantry tanks, and cruiser tanks. Infantry tanks thicker armor, slower, easy to follow the infantry charge. Cruise tanks were thinner armored, faster, and used for maneuvering. The British developed both tanks at the same time. In fact, is the continuation of the idea of naval combat. Infantry tanks are similar to battleships, cruiser tanks are similar to cruisers. This cannot be helped. After all, the tank at that time was a new thing. Everyone did not know how to use the Royal Navy world first. With the concept of building ships to build tanks, surely not bad, right? In fact, Britain built the first tank. Mark I type of money. Is Churchill privately diverted from the Navy earmarked? However, unlike the Navy's big ships and huge guns, due to the defeat of Germany in World War I does not allow the development of tanks, so the United Kingdom on the armor-piercing ability of the tank gun does not require high, regardless of infantry tanks or cruiser tanks, above the mounted 40mm or 57mm small water pipe, and some infantry tanks in order to facilitate the support of the infantry, and even loaded with a large caliber short-barreled howitzers, completely give up the ability of the anti-tank. And whether it is a small water tube or short tube howitzers, their requirements for turret seat diameter are very small, resulting in British tanks generally extremely narrow hulls, limiting the ability to upgrade high-power guns. Britain will be the three elements of the tank: mobility, protection, firepower. Forced separation of ideas, soon in World War II, was a miserable failure. Both infantry tanks or cruiser tanks, it is difficult to penetrate the armor of the German Tigers. In fact, the British man-made gun technology first class, powerful 17-pound gun is enough to penetrate the Tigress, but the British were also surprised to find that none of their tanks were able to replace this gun, is because the turret seat diameter is too small. Finally, the British had to put this good gun to the United States of America's M4 Sherman on the resulting Firefly tanks, but also in World War II, Britain's only tanks able to fight with the Tigers and Leopards. After learning from the bitter experience, Britain denied the backward classification of infantry tanks and cruiser tanks and began to develop a new, heavy cruiser tank in 1943, with a balanced design of maneuverability, protection and firepower, codenamed A-41, which is pronounced as Sun Q Loon, meaning Centurion. The A-41 was a new type of heavy cruiser with a balanced design in terms of maneuverability and firepower. In order to cure the stubborn problem of small upgrade potential, Centurion tank size is very huge, 7.5 meters long, 3 meters high, 51 tons of weight. Not only in the first generation of post-war medium tanks is deservedly the first, and even more than the then Soviet Union's heavy tanks, T-10, as well as the Soviet Union's strongest battle tanks T-80, 30 years later, until the T-14, heavy cruiser. It was only after the appearance of the T-14 Armata that the Soviets came up with a tank heavier than the Centurion. The large size of the Centurion allowed it to change to a more powerful gun, initially equipped with a 76.2mm gun, upgraded to an 83.4mm gun in 1948, and then replaced in 1959 with a 105mm L7 gun. The L7 is known for its compactness, high accuracy, long range, and armor-piercing capability, and was the standard NATO tank gun in the 1960s-1980s, and was mounted on the M60, Leopard 1, Merkava, and M1. Moreover, due to the ample space in the hull, the pitch angle of the main gun of the Centurion was particularly large, reaching -10 degrees, +20 degrees, which was the largest among all post-war main battle tanks. It is by relying on the high accuracy and large pitch angle of the main gun, the Israeli army can be in the Golan Heights high, with more than 100 Centurions to block more than 1,000 T-54, T-55 and T-62, composed of armored torrent. Some of you may have said that tanks are too tall and increase the area of a hit. That's right, the Soviet tank design philosophy was to reduce the size of the tank to reduce the area of the hit area, and at the same time reduce the weight of the hull, which in turn reduced the requirements for armor and engine. However, there were also advantages to having a larger tank. In addition to a larger gun elevation angle, the spacious interior of the tank increased the amount of ammunition carried, facilitated gun loading, and reduced crew fatigue after long periods of marching and fighting. It is because of the Centurion car space the British engineers even designed for the crew of a special electric tea stove, for the British soldiers love to drink black tea. This is absolutely to enhance the combat effectiveness of the magic weapon. Of course, the Centurion was not without its shortcomings. The biggest problem was the lack of travel. Due to the use of gasoline engines, the Centurion's maximum road travel was only 102 kilometers, and the later models only 190 kilometers, while the Soviet tanks of the same period generally reached more than 400 kilometers. However, also thanks to its large hull, the Centurion could be easily remanufactured, and Israel replaced the Centurion with a more powerful and fuel-efficient diesel engine, which increased its maximum range to 500 kilometers and its maximum speed from 35 to 50 kilometers per hour. The maximum speed was also increased from 35 kilometers h to 50 kilometers h. In addition, Israel has replaced the Centurion's original hand-operated gearbox with an automatic transmission, which greatly reduces the driver's operating intensity and simplifies driving training. At the same time, Israel's Centurion also upgraded the air-cooled braking system. A new type of fire suppression system, ammunition carrying capacity has increased from 65 to 72 rounds, and even installed the Merkava Mk2 fire control system, including thermal imager, laser rangefinder and crosswind sensors and other equipment. With the addition of a new generation of reactive armor, the Israeli Centurion was infinitely closer to a third-generation main battle tank in terms of combat effectiveness than the compact Soviet five-wheeler could ever hope to achieve. Between 1945 and 1962, Britain produced 4,423 Sun-Kissed tanks of various types and exported them to more than 10 countries, with a total export volume of more than 2,500 tanks, although the total production of 20,000 M47, 48 and 60,000 T-54 55th tanks is not comparable. But it is not that the Centurion is not good enough. It is that Britain has limited national power. But this is not because the performance of the Centurion itself is not good, but the UK's national strength is limited. Military sales are not only weapons, but also political influence. If you look at the design level alone, the Centurion is definitely advanced and ahead of its time to be able to span WWII, the post-war generation and the post-war generation with a single model. Is there another tank in the world that can do that? You know. And Centurion, at the same time, the development of the United States medium tank is the M26, after nearly 20 years, the United States all the way to the development of the M46, M47, M48, all the way up to 1960 M60 service. 5 iterations. Only in the comprehensive performance of the basic level of the Centurion, the US tank design level of low, can be seen. The United States, the 5 models, the total production of nearly 40,000. If the Centurion was born in the United States, I'm afraid that easily more than 40,000. As for Germany and France, not to mention, the two countries have not developed the first generation of tanks, but the direct development of the second generation of tanks, Leopard 1 and AMX-30 than the M60, but also 5 or 6 years late service. Because of this, the NATO tank competition, Silver Cup prize, is a pure silver Centurion tank model, which I am afraid that the Western world, on the British tank's greatest praise,